off with this next man I'm about to bring before you guys today. Man, he is down to earth. He's very humble, just like the other speakers that we have brought before you today. I met this gentleman at a feast day gathering, and he supported me. I was out as a vendor. I was out selling my books, and he came by the table. He helped support the work. He was on the move real quick, but he gave me his business card. And one day I had that inkling to reach out to him and just see what was going on. So I reached out to this brother, and I drove up to his city. And upon meeting him, we sat down at a restaurant. He, just like Attorney Kingdom, he wouldn't let me pay for my meal. But we sat down and we broke bread, literally. And we started to see that we had different things in common, a nice amount of things in common, both being in ministry, both having an entrepreneurial mindset, and the list goes on and on. And so we had a real good meal. We stayed in contact with each other. And he's one of those people that you have very few people in your life that when you meet them for the first time, you automatically feel something. And it's like, I don't know if you ever felt like you met a brother or a sister the very first time you met them, where it wasn't the first time we met, but the second time when we met in person. When we finally sat down, this man invited me into his home. All right, I know he doesn't invite everyone into his home, but he has a discernment level on to him, and this man really loves helping people. He's had a tremendous amount of success. I'm not about to go ahead and go out into all the success that him and I was able to speak on. But he's had a tremendous amount of success. He loves helping people. I'm going to go ahead and introduce him. The next speaker up on the hour, his name is Josef Lee. So we had Joseph to Joseph. All right, Joseph Lee. Joseph Lee is the CEO of Lee Wealth Group Mortgage, based out of Indianapolis, Indiana. Recognized as one of the top producers in the country. He has financed over $350 million worth of mortgage loans throughout the United States. Joseph enjoys developing loan officers and helping his community in various capacities. He served as a founding board member for Ignite Achievement Academy and more recently, the Holiday Park Foundation. He also served as a student mentor at Wabash College for the Malcolm X Institute. Joseph graduated from Vincennes University with a degree in behavioral science and later matriculated at Indiana University School of Psychology, IUPUI, before starting his career in finance. He spent 7 years in various levels of manufacturing management. His faith and his family are of the utmost importance to him. An avid traveler, he loves learning about history and different cultures throughout the world. Joseph hopes to continue growing Lee Group Mortgage and serving others. I want everybody to go put those hands together and give a warm wisdom and wealth introduction and a welcome to our brother, Joseph Lee. Let's put those hands together and show some love for our brother, Joseph Lee.
Shalom, shalom. All praises to the Most High. I appreciate the opportunity and all those kind words as well, man. And I definitely appreciate you, man. The brotherhood that we've had, from, like you mentioned, from the very beginning. I'm excited to be on and just share just a few nuggets, man. With just and at the end of the day, just wouldn't allow me to get away. But hopefully, I can kind of catch some on the back end here of this conference. So I appreciate the opportunity to just kind of break bread with you all. And I'm excited, man. So just want to kind of hit on a few things, if that's okay. And as he said, I'm president of Lee Wealth Group Mortgage. Just to give you a little bit of my background. When I went into financing, I came in as a loan officer for a company that had been established for about 20 years. From that point forward, I kind of knew, I was like, well, this is pretty catchy, because there was always like kind of a hustler in me that wanted to go beyond, just being an hourly employee. And I know that has its place, do not get me wrong. But for me, I was seeing that my hard work wasn't necessarily being rewarded in the way that I felt like it should be rewarded. And So my mind began to shift a little bit outside of manufacturing management that I was, that was really my background, but I just saw the ceiling, that was there. So that's when I decided to, in February of 2016, I got licensed as a loan officer, worked for a company for a total of 7 years. The first 5 years I was a loan officer. The last 2 years with them, I was a branch manager. I began to kind of work my own P&L, profit and loss statement, and everything like that. And I saw, hey, I saw how lucrative it could be, and really how much of a blessing it could be, honestly, to other people. And that's really one of the things that I always think about when you think about the millionaire mindset. It's like, it's really not about you. It's about to be able to provide resources for other people. So, the word tells us that money answers all things. And I obviously, I have to hold it, in the right regard. But to say that it's not necessary, that would be wrong. But so it's a tool, to create wealth, but it's also a tool to create opportunity, and that's kind of really what I've looked at, or how my relationship with money has been. On top of Lee Wealth Group Mortgage, I currently have a real estate portfolio of about a little over $4 million worth of real estate that I own. And, I'll get into that a little bit later, but it kind of really the millionaire mindset. 90% of the world's millionaires really have started out with ownership of property. And that number really hasn't fluctuated much from year year. Sometimes you'll see, that statisticians kind of give you some different numbers on that. But in general, that was one thing that I knew and I definitely believed in, was like, okay, so if most of the people that are gaining wealth in this, not even in this country, but in the world, started out with owning real estate, then maybe that's a good place to start. So for me, that was important to start accumulating properties. And I started doing that really in, I think, 2009, 2008-ish, 2009 was when my mind really started to owning real estate mindset when it comes to real estate. Basically, like I've sold maybe one or two properties, I think, and outside of that, really, I buy them to hold them. Just because when you look at the history of property, and look at statistics on and percentages on values, they either hold or usually go up. So a house in real estate or real property, I would tell anybody, before, and look, people can do what they want, but I know what worked for me, and what works for me is, maybe put 20 to 30%, stock market related things, but really outside of that, most of your wealth is and can and probably should be within actually owning property. So I would buy them, hold them, and basically just rent them out. And that's still what I do to this day, is rent these places out. And and at times when I have tenants and things like that, I try to also coach them into actually buying. And it's not about trying to get into debt, but the reality is it's really an investment for anybody and everybody who owns a house. So I do want to kind of hit on just briefly just that process, because in our community, there's obviously, we know the disparity with home ownership numbers amongst our own communities. Unfortunately, we're last. And but when you're talking about connecting ownership, property ownership, real estate ownership, when you're connecting that to wealth, if we're last on the totem pole when it comes to ownership, then maybe that's a good place to start, is actually starting to own some things. A home run, at the very beginning either, and I that's one way I try to coach people who are looking into starting this journey, to wealth and increasing wealth, is like, hey, look, you don't have to start off with a $400,000 or $500,000 home, but let's see what you can acquire, and especially if you have the skills to actually do a little work on the house yourself. But even if you don't, let's see if we can acquire something for $50,000, and start at that point. But every journey, as they say, every journey requires its first step. So for me, that was my mindset from the beginning. I knew I was not going to hit a home run from the very beginning, but I knew also that I had to start somewhere. And that's vital to have that mentality and that mindset, because otherwise you set yourself up for disappointment. And I've known a lot of people who've started off, and it's like, they again, because they think they have to hit a home run from the very beginning, they they drop out early. They'll sell the house if the minute it starts having a little trouble or something like that. Oh, this is too much. This is too much, and maybe I'm not gaining enough income, and that kind of mindset is what you find, unfortunately. But when you think long term, then you tend to be more patient about the process. And I love that, and I enjoy that. That long term aspect of things, because it's like, look, when it's all said and done, and you look up and you have a real estate portfolio that looks pretty good. It puts you in a lot better shape to be able to actually quit working at some point. So for me, that's kind of where I'm at. I also do have a couple places that I not just rent out regular rentals, but Airbnbs and things of that nature. I would say do your homework, do your due diligence when it comes to what you're buying, understand it, and get a good grasp on what you're doing. I purchased a house also in Mexico, but I had to, before I did that, I made sure I did my due diligence as far as how does that process look. What are the Airbnb rentals? What's that look like? What kind of money does that bring in there? Particularly for houses within the same specs that house is in. So I would say do your homework before you start doing things. But the three main points when it comes to ownership in America is credit, income, and assets. So I do want to hit briefly on those. Because again, it's an educational tool, but it's also again, look at ownership as really just a springboard to wealth. And again, you're listening to somebody who has walked those steps out. So when it comes to credit, I would say obviously the easy thing is to say, hey, clean it all up, kind of thing, if somebody has bad credit. But we know that. But as far as actually starting the credit journey from scratch, I always tell people, hey, get you a couple low balance secured credit cards and just start there. And a secured credit card is a type of credit card that requires basically a security deposit. It typically serves as the credit card's credit limit. And this deposit acts as a collateral basically for the bank or wherever you're getting a secured credit card from. It makes it easier for individuals with limited or even no credit sometimes to be able to build positive credit history. And I always tell people, when you get those credit cards, keep those balances, keep a balance on them, but keep the balances under 20% if you can. And that's in my industry, in the mortgage lending industry, when I've seen people do that, that's what always tends to yield those high credit scores. 800 plus credit scores, 760 plus credit scores are people who they're not living on credit. They're not using that as a means to a survival tool. So I'd say, but definitely kind of utilize credit in a good way. And to me, honestly, this is a means to an end. It's not the end all be all, but it's just a means to be able to get to where we want to get to. And so, when you start talking about accumulation of properties, when banks start seeing, that good positive credit history, you got 5 years under your belt, maybe 10 years under your belt, and you've done nothing but make on-time payments on all these cards and things like that. It's a lot easier to go somewhere and be able to get what you need in order to kind of get what you're acquiring, wanting to acquire, such as the property. The other piece of things is income. Banks were looking for basically stability in income. A lot of times people think you have to be at the same job for 2 years. No, that's not necessarily true, but they are looking for 2 years of solid work history. So stability is what they're looking for. Nobody wants to give a loan, and I don't care if it's 20,000 or 50,000, whatever else, to somebody that can't demonstrate that they know how to work a job. And it sounds simple in concept, but in reality, a lot of times we all know people. Sometimes it was us, where it's just like we're hopping from place to place. We've got all these ideas, and that's one thing I would say in business: lock in on something. That old saying, Jack of all trades, master of none. It rings true to a lot of people. All of us know people, man, that's all over the place when it comes to what they want to do. And I understand kind of spreading things out a little bit, but you have to have that balance, and you have to understand like where to stop at. Just because most of the people that I know that they've got too many business ventures going on, the reality is, they're all getting starved because you've got too many things going on at one time. But when it comes to that income and that job history and things like that, just know, hey, it's okay to be still for a hot minute just to make sure that, again, it's not the end, but it is a part of the process when it comes to ownership. Assets, the other thing, I would say save, save, save. That word today in society, honestly, is almost like nobody values that anymore. Saving, we can look to a lot of times. That's why we're looking. Sometimes our grandparents had more than us. Although they had a harder struggle than what we have today in terms of just racial inequality and things like that. But most of the time we can look and say, oh, well, grandmother owned this place, grandpa owned this place, or he owned 2 or 3 places, and why is it that we in our generation, like we can't grasp one of this concept of just saving and putting things away? Is because really consumerism has kind of taken over our society, so it's things that we really normally wouldn't even want become an attraction to us, and we start buying and we get sucked up into consumerism. But I would say when it comes to locking in on this thing with with ownership, save, save, save. This involves intentionality, and it also involves a budget. I won't ask. I'll just ask it rhetorically, a rhetorical question. But how many of us actually operate on a real budget? You don't have to answer. It's just food for thought. It's a rhetorical question. How many of us actually operate on a real budget? And it's just something to think about. And whether or not you do or not. And that's whether within your business should have a budget, and your personal life obviously should have a budget. What you got going on in your personal life, both of those should have a budget. And I don't care if you're operating an LLC that's been going for just a couple of years or something, like whatever the case is. It can be an S corp, it can be a big corporation, whatever it is. You have to have a budget. But save, save, save is what I would say. My mind always goes to that. It's a Benjamin Franklin, I think he's the one that quoted it, but he said, beware of the little expenses. He said, a small leak will sink a great ship. Beware of the little expenses. A small leak will sink a great ship. A lot of times when we think about saving, we automatically go to the big ticket items that we could stop spending on. But the reality is, when you look at statistics and things like that, most of our spending is an accumulation of little small things that we cannot stop spending on. A lot of small unnecessary things that we cannot, or what we can stop spending on, but we will not. Let me put it like that. But we refuse and will not stop spending on. So it's the accumulation of small things. And I would say, take that macro look at things, at your budget and your spending habits and things like that. And I'm telling you now, you'll end up probably finding probably 5, 6, 7, 8 things off the bat that you can eliminate, absolutely eliminate. Will it be difficult, or maybe at first, to kind of get in the swing and the habit of things? Yeah, but it's just like anything else. Once you start it becomes the norm. And these are ways that my company, we try to go beyond just giving, doing the lending and things like that, particularly with our own people, because those are the biggest things that prohibit us from acquiring wealth, again, which starts at ownership. So we really try to make sure we extend a hand beyond just saying, okay, yeah, you closed on a house and this, that, and the third. Our services really go beyond that. So what I mean is basically we'll send um, automation out, automated emails out and things like that when it comes to people's budgeting. And that way too, it's obviously just and it's also a good tool to repeat business as well, but it's really for our people, but save, save, save. And a few things I would want to hit on, four quick points I want to hit on. Before I finish, and this kind of shifts out of the ownership aspect of things, because again, we understand that ownership is kind of really, it's a substratum of wealth, right? I don't mean to quote Karl Marx, but he's accredited for saying that. But it really is ownership. That's where it all starts at. But I want to shift from ownership to kind of just really talking about the millionaire mindset, and basically 4 habits that I know that I make sure that I routinely, well, not the habits, but 4 things that I really make a routine part of what I do in terms of action and also mindset. One is I always tell myself to make sure I'm married to a routine. Married to a routine. It's all that much more important now because we have so many things that can pull us away from focusing on what we need to do. So for me, it's vital because I just have so many, I guess, people, places, and things kind of pulling at me within my own company and business, that if I don't have a routine, and if I'm not married to that routine, then man, there's going to be a whole lot of things that will not get done. Absolutely will not get done. And so for me, that means for me staying on my square. In other words, not letting anything push me off of what I need to do. I know I need to do on a daily basis. And when my mindset started shifting and saying, okay, well, I have to do this, really honestly, business got better, more clientele. A lot of things got smoother within the operation of my company and what we're doing. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But we're at a point where it's like, all right, we understand and know that this is actually working, making sure I'm staying disciplined to a routine. So I know automatically every day, hey, my first thing is just to pray and meditate for that first hour that I wake up. So that's always a part of my daily routine. Prayer, meditation. It starts there for me. And then right after that, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to prioritize my previous day's calls, texts, and emails until about noon, give or take a few minutes, depending on what's going on. But that's always going to be a part of the next steps of my routine for that day. Has to be. And then once the afternoon hits, I'll take on new mortgage related calls. So whether it's calls for me, people wanting to do financing through me, or sometimes people will call the company wanting to do financing through one or some of our loan officers and things like that, I automatically know that that's a part of my afternoon routine. Once that morning routine is done and over with. So in the afternoon, I'm taking on new mortgage related calls and also property management related things. I'm handling that until about 5 o'clock. Again, give or take a few minutes. But typically it's still about 5 o'clock for me, but I have to be married to my routine. I have to. Otherwise, things just don't get done. And if they do get done, they're not going to get done the right way. And then I'm being inefficient because I'm having to circle back and do something that had I just been locked in on what I was doing, it would have been done the right way. But, hey, sometimes it takes, going through that to understand that you have to stay locked in and focused on what you got to do. Number 2, the thing that I want to talk about is identifying your distractions. This is something that I have to be intentional about. Identifying my distractions. Why do I say my distractions? Because the things that might distract me may not be your things that distract you. So I've had to be intentional again about making sure I'm identifying my distractions. And you have to be intentional about identifying your distractions when it comes to business and your goals and whatever that may be. And maybe everybody doesn't want to the same exact results, but wherever you do want to be, you have to identify your distractions. For me, I define that as things that take away my focus, and things that I know will be difficult for me to reconvene what I was doing. I'll repeat that. Things that take away my focus, and also things that I've identified as that make it very difficult for me to reconvene what I was doing. I have to identify those things. I have to. Because again, it would take me off my square. You have to draw the line somewhere. And one thing in my mind, it's like I have to, this can be difficult because at times, this is something to keep in mind too, but at times, I think you disappoint people, but you have to know that even that comes along with the territory. It comes along with the territory, because what if you allow 10 people, the emotions of 10 people that want to try to reach you or talk to you within the same, day? What if you allow that to all 10, your emotions to cater to all 10 of those people? Guess what? You're not going to get anything done. So at some point I've had to circle back, and I have to, and guilty as charged, but I've had to circle back and say, hey, I apologize, but I was really focused. I had to lock in on what I was doing. But for me, it almost reminds me of that Mamba mentality. I don't know how many Kobe Bryant fans are out there, man, in the group, but that's one thing I loved about Kobe. I didn't kind of like him, to be honest with you, because I felt like, whatever, sometimes he was a little cocky, and I'm a Jordan guy myself too. But that was one thing you could find about Kobe was, look, he was focused, and he wasn't always necessary. Like, the concern of other people's emotions was not always at the forefront of Kobe Bryant's mindset. Y'all know that. Do I got any basketball fans in here, or even just kind of remotely? We all know Kobe would be the first one to say, I don't care. But sometimes you can't cave in to your emotions when it comes to some of the distractions. And again, it's not to say you don't have humility and circle back at some point and say, hey, I apologize, and this, that, and the third. But if you allow, kind of almost reminds me of sin. What's the word say about sin? You little leaven leaveneth the whole lump. But if you start catering to the emotions of needing to always respond all the time, you have to discriminate. And for me, that's a part of that millionaire mindset. I have to discriminate what can wait, what can hold. And I have already, and maybe it's just that meticulous part of me, but I also know that for me, I'm like, look, I've calculated it. 90% of distractions are waitable. They're waitable. WAIT-able. They are. I mean, that's just the bottom line. 90% of distractions are typically waitable for me. And you can do your own numbers, your own statistics and things like that. But when I evaluate some of the things that kind of can draw me away at the drop of a hat, I'm able to eliminate some of those and say, hey, I'll circle back to that when I have time. But because 90% of those, things I've deemed as distractions, they're waitable. Third thing is to always keep your vision in mind and at the forefront of what you're doing. And that's with any goal that you have, whether it's a company that you're starting, whether it's, sometimes people got a goal of losing weight or doing this or whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. Always keep that vision at the forefront of my mind. And when I think about the business and Lee Wealth Group Mortgage, that's my baby. But obviously, like I said, I've got the real estate portfolio that I have to handle on a daily basis as well. But I always have to keep that my vision. And in other words, like, hey, why did I start any of this? And where am I trying to go with this? I know we have to rewrite the vision, right? Rewrite the vision. We make it plain, but also try to make sure that it's plain to other people that are within my sphere. Why is that important? Look, I've got an office manager. I've got, a personal assistant. I've got a loan assistant, and I've got people around. And it's like, it's very important that that not just that vision is at the forefront of their mind as well. So I make sure that I share that vision, and the direction that I'm wanting things to go with routinely. We're at least talking about it 3-4 times a week in some form or fashion, the vision of the company, even if it's just a short conversation, but I'm intentional about that. Because I know that I need these other people to help the vision come to life. Most of the time you can talk to anybody. You can talk to the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. You can talk to restaurant managers. You can talk to NBA players. It was achieved the highest level of success. Anybody that you talk to that is a high achiever, it always involved somebody else to try to help help them get where they were trying to go. And for me, that rings true every day. So I talk to my people about the vision, and I try to say, hey, well, this is where we're wanting to go with the wealth group. And I'll give you a quick example, and I'll move on from this point. But one of my visions for the company was to actually be, instead of just a brokerage, I knew once we hit a certain point, I said, hey, I want to make sure that we actually are a full-fledged mortgage bank, right? So that way you have more flexibility in terms of your pricing for interest rates and all those other things. But so for me, I knew that at the 24-month mark, that I wanted to make sure that we had a warehouse line, basically like where we could fund our own loans. We're a full-fledged mortgage bank. So I talked to them, and I not just do I talk to my team about it, but I've got them involved in helping with the process. I can't. One thing that bothers me about sometimes when people make it to where they want, they act like they. You've got to maintain that humility, because sometimes people will act like they got there on their own. I'll be the first to tell you, I couldn't do this on my own. And it's always important to value your people, value the people around you, those that have sown into you, because nobody makes it out here alone, right? That's true. And I don't care if you've got a $4 million real estate portfolio, or whether you're making 50 grand a year, at a warehouse job. It doesn't matter. But I talk to my people about that vision because I understand their value and their value to me and what I'm trying to do. Absolutely, I talk about it. We're also getting certified. We're in the process of getting certified. Basically, it gives us access to all the grant money, that whether on a city level, state level, and on a federal level. But I've got my team involved with getting us certified because I value them. So I keep that vision at the forefront of their minds. Oh, so you're a part of what we're trying to do here. But if you have a millionaire mindset, you understand that it's not just about you. It's not just about you. So I love it because I've got the buy-in of the people around me. Is it peaches and cream every day? Absolutely not. Are we always looking to try to get better? Yes, we are. Do we recognize our shortcomings? Absolutely. But we're pushing forward. Together. So I always make sure I keep that vision in mind. Proverbs 13:16 says that a wise man thinks ahead and a fool doesn't, and even brags about it. So for me, it's always, look, I'm always wanting to be a step ahead of even myself. Where are we going? What about tomorrow? What do we got? What's the goal for next year when it comes to my company? When we are where we are, when we're at where we want to be, rather, what's the next step after that? So I'm always constantly thinking ahead. The last point I want to make is rest. I don't know how old everybody is here, but for me, at 46, this year especially, I've been more intentional about making sure rest is a part of what I'm doing. I think it's good to kind of share with people the road and the path that I've taken to get where I'm at, and I tell people a lot of times how it all started off. Hey, used to go in at 7 a.m., make sure I was at the office at 7 a.m., and then I typically live around midnight. I did that for a few where I wanted to be. But guess what? I'm not doing that anymore because it's not wise. It's not wise. And if you're talking about accumulating more wealth and things like that, guess what? I would run out of gas if I don't prioritize rest. Things can wait. And sometimes you got to understand that so-called work can wait a little bit as well. But rest is to the utmost importance. And so, I know that, hey, if my tank is empty, then I have nothing else to give. So these are some of the things that I wanted to make sure I spoke on and kind of put out there, because no matter what we're doing, again, whether it's a business, personal things, goals, and things like that, if you're talking, and especially if you're talking about having a millionaire mindset, I'm telling you, you can talk to anybody. I mean, and some of these are just things that I've learned also by watching other people who brain. What are you doing? What are you not doing? And that rest, I'm telling you now, that's always a common denominator, especially once you get to a certain point. Just because you have to have that recharge, and for me, it's, again, especially as time goes on, that's to the utmost importance. And I can't do this, or no, I can't do that. And you got to be okay with it. People who love you, they're going to be in your corner, and they're going to understand it. So these are some of the nuggets that I wanted to kind of drop on you all. I'm certainly open for any Q&A, and I always tell people, hey, if I don't have the answers, I'll try to get answers and that kind of thing. But hopefully you all were able to hear something that is helpful in terms of just having some insight on that millionaire mindset. And I absolutely love my brother Joseph Joshua, the work that he's doing. And just I love it, man. So I appreciate you again just for the opportunity to kind of come and break bread with you all. So, yeah.